There is a hidden formula by which a man may step beyond the walls of chance and enter the certainty of his own chosen fortune. The world calls it luck, fate, the wheel turning in one's favor. But tonight, I will show you that there is no chance, no wheel, no fickle fate. There is only law. And this law, once known, makes the lottery a matter not of numbers, but of consciousness. It is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. When these words were first spoken, they were not given as a poet's dream, nor as some lofty hope to comfort the weary. They were a declaration of a living law, a law as certain as the rising of the sun, as faithful as the beating of your own heart. The kingdom is not a place of distant glory, reached only by the soul after the body's last breath. It is not some far-off land where the streets are gold and the gates are pearl, while here you must labor and strain in dust and scarcity. No, the kingdom is the unseen realm of your own consciousness, the treasury in which all that you could ever wish to possess already exists, whole and complete. When you hear the word feather, cast aside the thought of an aged figure upon a throne in the clouds. See instead the eternal presence that speaks when you say, I am. That is the Father. The moment you declare, I am, you are calling upon the very source of life itself, the source from which springs every form, every condition, every possession. To say, I am, and then join it with a quality or condition is to claim that thing as your own. If you say, I am healthy, you unite yourself with the state of health. If you say, I am rich, you unite yourself with the state of wealth. Whether the outer evidence agrees or not, the seed has been planted, and in time the world must reflect your inner claim. Consider the words again. It is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. This is no reluctant gift, no reluctant granting of some distant favor. It is the pleasure, the joy of the infinite within you to bestow upon you the fullness of all that you can imagine. You need not wrest it from some unwilling hand, nor persuade it through endless pleading. It is already yours, as surely as the air you breathe. There are those who spend their lives imagining the kingdom as something to be earned by toil, sacrifice, and endless waiting. They imagine themselves on the outskirts, peering in through the gates, believing that perhaps one day, after years of labor, they may be allowed to step inside. But the truth is this: you are already in the kingdom, though you may be unaware of it. The treasures you seek are already yours, though you may have locked them away behind the bars of unbelief. The key to those treasures lies not in the outer world, but in the inner act of recognition. Imagine a man living in poverty, convinced that the only wealth in the world belongs to others. He trudges daily to his work, counting his coins with care, fearing that tomorrow will bring even less than today. Now imagine that beneath his floorboards lies a chest of gold, placed there by his ancestors, enough to supply him and his children for generations. The gold is his by right of inheritance, but until he knows it is there, he cannot touch it. He may pray for relief, he may labor until his hands are raw, but until his awareness changes, the gold remains hidden. The moment he learns of it, the poverty vanishes, not because the gold has suddenly appeared, but because he has discovered it was his all along. This is the meaning of the kingdom. The wealth, the health, the love, the success, the fulfillment you long for are not things you must create from nothing. They exist now, as real and as present as the breath in your lungs, awaiting only your recognition. The Father, your own I am, delights in your awareness of them, for your awareness is the act that calls them forth. Some will say, but if it is already mine, why do I not see it? And the answer is simple, because you have not yet claimed it in consciousness. The outer world is but a shadow, a reflection of the inner. If you would see a new reflection, you must first alter the reality within. Just as a mirror cannot change the image until the object before it changes, so the world cannot reflect your desire until you have assumed the state of already having it. A woman once told me that she had long dreamed of owning her own home, yet for years she had wandered from one small rented room to another. She blamed her wages, the rising cost of property, and the lack of opportunity in her city. I told her to forget all that. I asked her instead to dwell nightly just before sleep in the feeling of being in her own home. I told her to imagine turning the key in the door, walking through the rooms, feeling the floor beneath her feet, hearing the sound of her own steps in the quiet. She did this faithfully, and within months, a relative she had not seen in years offered her a house fully paid for, simply because she had come to mind one day. She had not forced this into being. She had simply entered the state in which such a gift could be given. Do you see? The kingdom is always offering, but the acceptance must be made within. The outer act may take the form of a ticket bought, a business begun, a friendship formed, but these are only the channels through which the inner claim flows. The source is always the same, the I am within you. When you hear kingdom, think of fullness, the complete perfect possession of all that is good. The kingdom contains no half measures, no partial blessings. If you desire wealth, the kingdom does not offer you a fraction of abundance. It offers you abundance in its entirety. If you desire love, it does not grant you affection mixed with indifference. It offers you love in its purest form. The only limit to what you may receive is the limit you place upon your own capacity to accept. A young man once said to me, "I have been imagining wealth, but I fear it is too much to ask." He felt unworthy, as though the Father might give him a little comfort, but not great riches. I told him the Father knows no small gifts, no rationing of supply. To the infinite, to give a coin or to give a kingdom is the same. The limitation is not in the giver but in the receiver. If you hold out a thimble, you will receive a thimbleful. If you hold out a barrel, you will receive a barrelful. The kingdom's storehouse is inexhaustible, and it is your Father's good pleasure, His joy, to fill whatever vessel you present. And what is this vessel? It is your state of consciousness. To expect little is to present a small vessel. To expect much is to present a large one. But the expectation must be more than a wish. It must be the quiet, inner certainty that what you seek is already yours. There is a story of a traveler who came upon two men at work. He asked the first, "What are you doing?" The man replied, "I am laying bricks." He asked the second, "And what are you doing?" The man smiled and said, "I am building a cathedral." Both were doing the same outward work, but one's vision was small while the other's was vast. The man who saw himself building a cathedral poured into each brick the spirit of his vision, and in time, his name was remembered as the master builder. The other remained merely a laborer. The kingdom responds to the scope of your vision, for the Father gives according to your acceptance. When you read, "It is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom," take it as a present tense truth. It is not will give, nor may give, but to give. The giving is constant, unceasing, as the sun forever shines. The only question is whether you will step into that light or remain in the shadow of disbelief. I say to you, begin this moment to claim the kingdom, not with the strain of effort, but with the gentle acceptance that it is already yours. Let your inner speech be words of possession, not of longing. Instead of saying, "I want," say, "I have." Instead of, "I will be," say, "I am." This is the language of the kingdom. This is the key that opens every hidden door. Even now, there are desires within you that you have not dared to speak aloud, for fear they are too grand, too impossible. But the very presence of those desires is the proof that they are already yours in the unseen. For nothing can be desired unless it already exists. The seed of your longing is the evidence of the fruit, though it may still lie beneath the soil. Do not dig it up in doubt, tend it in faith. The Father takes pleasure in your harvest, for your harvest is His expression through you. And so, when you hear the promise, It is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Hear it as a personal message to you in this very moment. The kingdom is not withheld, it is not delayed. It is here, it is now, it is within you. All that remains is for you to recognize it, to claim it, and to live as though it were already visible to your eyes. For the moment you do, the outer world will shape itself to match the inner reality, and you will walk in the kingdom you have always possessed. The law by which all manifestation takes place is not hidden in the clouds, nor locked in the minds of a chosen few. It is woven into the very fabric of life, as natural and constant as the beating of your heart. You may call it the law of assumption, the law of consciousness, or the law of being, for all these are but different garments worn by the same eternal principle. Simply put, you become what you assume yourself to be, and the world around you is nothing more than the reflection of that inner assumption. To those who have been taught that life is a game of chance, this may sound almost unbelievable. They will say, surely there are accidents, random events, strokes of luck and twists of fate. And yet, if they would but look back upon their lives with honest eyes, they would see that every so-called accident was drawn into their path by an inner state they had consented to occupy. There is no event, however small, that is not called forth by consciousness. The numbers that win a lottery, the friend you meet by chance, the letter that arrives unlooked for, all are summoned by the unseen cause within you. The outer world is a mirror, and like a mirror, it has no power of its own to create. It merely reflects what stands before it. If you wish to change what you see in the mirror, you do not press your hands upon the glass and try to mold the image there. You change yourself, your stance, your expression, your position, and instantly the reflection alters to match. In just the same way, if you would change the events and conditions of your life, you must first change the inner state from which those events and conditions flow. The inner state is the sum total of what you accept as true of yourself. It is not the passing thoughts that flit across your mind in idle moments, but the deep-seated conviction that governs your reactions to life. If, beneath all outward words, you carry the quiet certainty that you are unlucky, the world will continually offer you evidence of misfortune. If, on the other hand, you dwell in the awareness that all things work together for your good, you will find even the most unpromising events arranging themselves to serve you. This is why, when one seeks a great change, be it the winning of a prize, the gaining of wealth, or the healing of the body, the first and only real work is to assume the state in which that change is already an accomplished fact. The mistake most make is to wait for the outer sign before they feel the inner assurance. They say, when I have the winning ticket in my hand, then I will feel the joy of victory. But the law works in reverse. Only when you feel the joy of victory will the winning ticket be drawn into your hand. There is an ancient saying, to him that hath shall be given, and from him that hath not shall be taken away even that which he hath. This is no cruel decree, but the description of a simple spiritual law. To him that hath refers to the one who already possesses the feeling of having, who already dwells in the state of the fulfilled desire. From such a one, nothing can be withheld, for life must bring into form the substance of that state. From him that hath not, speaks of the one who remains in the state of lack, who waits for evidence before accepting possession. From such a one, even the little he has seems to slip away, for his state of consciousness draws to him only more lack. Imagine two men who each desire to win a great sum in the lottery. The first says, "It is unlikely, but I will buy a ticket and hope for the best." He goes about his days with no real change in his inner conversation, still speaking inwardly of bills unpaid, of things desired but unaffordable. The second man, before a single number is drawn, enters into the feeling that the prize is already his. In the quiet of his mind, he hears the announcement, sees his own name upon the list of winners, feels the weight of the check in his hand. Though the world around him has not yet changed, his inner world is alive with the certainty of possession. Which of these two will the law serve? Always the one who has assumed the state of having, for the law has no choice but to reproduce that state in outer form. You may think this a fanciful notion, but consider the countless instances in your own life where you have felt certain of an outcome and seen the outer world arrange itself to match that certainty. Perhaps you thought of a friend you had not seen in years, and within days they appeared before you or sent a letter. Perhaps you dreaded some event, and sure enough, the very thing you feared came to pass. These are not coincidences, they are the natural workings of the law. You were dwelling, without knowing it, in a state, and that state brought forth its own likeness. If you can accept that your fears have the power to materialize, can you not also accept that your joys, your dreams, your grandest desires may do the same? The process is no different. The only change required is the choice of state. It is not enough, however, to declare the new state with your lips while denying it in your heart. Words spoken without feeling are as seeds cast upon stone. The state must be felt to be real. You must lose yourself in it, as an actor loses himself in a role, until the boundaries between pretend and true dissolve. When the feeling becomes natural, the work is done. The outer world will take care of itself. A woman once determined that she would be chosen for a highly coveted position in her city. A post that promised not only a handsome salary, but the honor she had long desired. There were many applicants, some with greater experience, others with more influential friends. But she refused to consider any possibility but her own success. Night after night, she imagined herself writing letters on the company's stationery, answering calls in her new office, hearing colleagues address her by the title of her new role. She felt the satisfaction of the work, the security of the income, the pride in her accomplishment. Weeks later, though she had told no one of her inner work, the offer came to her, and she learned that two of the favored candidates had withdrawn unexpectedly, leaving the path clear for her appointment. She did not cause their withdrawal by force of will over others, but by dwelling in the state in which her success was inevitable. Life then arranged the outer chain of events to match that inner reality. The world calls this luck, but there is nothing lucky about it. It is law. The ticket that wins, the meeting that opens a door, the chance remark that leads to a fortune. All these are the outer signs of an inner state assumed and sustained. To live by this law is to reverse the order in which most live. You must let the feeling precede the fact, not follow it. If you desire health, do not wait for the pain to cease before you feel whole. Feel whole, and the pain will cease. If you desire abundance, do not wait for the bank account to swell before you feel rich. Feel rich, and the account will reflect it. The state is the cause, the fact is the effect. This is why I tell you the winning ticket already exists, though your eyes have not yet seen it. The moment you dwell in the state of having it, you are one with that unseen reality, and the means of its appearance will be drawn to you as surely as a magnet draws iron filings. You may say, but I cannot feel what I do not yet have. And I tell you, you do this every day, but usually in the opposite direction. You feel anger before the quarrel, anxiety before the crisis, disappointment before the failure. You have no trouble feeling lack before it appears, yet you doubt your ability to feel abundance before it is visible. Reverse this habit. Practice feeling the joy of possession before the possession appears. This is the exercise of faith, not blind hope, but the deliberate choice to assume the reality of what you desire. Think of a seed planted in the earth. You do not wait for the first shoot to appear before believe it will grow. You know that within the dark soil, unseen to your eyes, the process has already begun. You water it, you tend the ground, because you are certain of the harvest. So it is with your assumption. Once planted in consciousness, it is growing, though the surface shows no sign. Trust the process, for the law is as sure in the unseen as it is in the seen. In this way, you will learn that the inner state not only precedes the fact, but is the only cause of the fact. And once you know this, you will cease to look to the outer world for proof before you believe. You will know that the proof appears because you have already believed. Close your eyes for a moment and allow the noise of the outer world to fade into the distance. Imagine yourself withdrawing from the demands of the day, from the faces, the voices, the unending stream of tasks and responsibilities. Enter that silent, still chamber within, where no one but you may enter and where all creation begins. In that chamber, you are free to see, to feel, to hear, to touch anything you desire, without limit, without restriction. This is the sacred space of imagination, and it is here that you must plant the seed of your desire. Every creation in this world, whether it is a towering building or a simple loaf of bread, began first in the unseen. The builder saw the house in his mind before a single brick was laid. The baker imagined the bread before the dough was mixed. Even the seed that grows into a tree contains within it the full pattern of the tree before it pushes its first tender shoot above the earth. In the same way, the life you desire, whether it is the winning of a great prize, the possession of wealth, the joy of perfect health, or the love of a particular companion, must first be formed within you, complete and perfect in every detail, before the outer world can bring it forth. This act of creation within is not mere daydreaming. A daydream is passive, like watching a cloud drift across the sky. What I speak of is deliberate, purposeful vision, the kind that engages not only the sight of the mind, but all the senses, until the scene becomes more real than the room in which you sit. You must see with such clarity that the image glows in the darkness of your closed eyes, hear with such vividness that the sounds linger after the scene fades, feel with such intensity that your body responds as though the experience were physical. Let us take as our example the winning of a prize in the lottery. If you were in possession of that prize now, what would you see? Perhaps the numbers printed boldly upon the ticket, the date and the official seal. Would there be colors? The crisp white of the paper, the deep ink of the print, the faint shadow of your fingers curled around it. What would you hear? The voice of the clerk saying, "These are the winning numbers, sir," or a friend's joyful cry, "You've done it." Would you hear the laughter of your family, the pop of a cork, the rustle of bills being counted? What would you feel? The smoothness of the ticket between your fingertips, the warmth of a handshake in congratulations, the weight of the check as you take it in hand. What scents would fill the air? The faint smell of ink, the fragrance of flowers sent to celebrate, the aroma of the feast prepared in your honor. Do not leave any sense untouched. The more fully you engage them all, the more completely your mind accepts the reality of the scene, and the more quickly the outer world moves to mirror it. For the outer world is compelled to match the inner picture, once that picture is accepted as real. There was a man I knew who longed to live by the sea. He was far from the coast, without the means to buy land there, but he would nightly close his eyes and walk along the shore in imagination. He would hear the waves breaking, smell the salt in the air, feel the sand under his bare feet, see the light of the moon dancing upon the water. He did this until he could recall these sensations more vividly than he could recall his own street. Months later, a business opportunity arose that brought him unexpectedly to the very town he had pictured, and within the year, he was living in a cottage on the shore. He had not chased the opportunity, it had come to him, drawn by the reality he had sustained within. The great error is to imagine only once or twice, as if the act were a wish cast into a well, and then return to the former state of lack or longing. This is like planting a seed, and then each day digging it up to see if it has sprouted. The seed must be left in the soil of imagination, nourished by repeated attention, watered by the feeling of fulfillment, warmed by the light of belief. Each night before sleep, return to your inner scene, not with the strain of effort, but with the gentle ease of one revisiting a beloved place. When you imagine, do not see yourself from a distance as though you were watching an actor on a stage. This is the view of the spectator, not the creator. Enter the scene and see it through your own eyes, hear with your own ears, feel with your own hands. If you imagine winning a prize, do not watch yourself holding the ticket, be the one who holds it. Look down at it in your hand, turn it over, run your fingers along its edge. This inward participation is the bridge between mere fantasy and creative vision. A woman once told me she had tried to imagine owning her own shop, but it never seemed real to her. I asked her to describe her scene, and she said she saw herself standing outside the shop, looking through the window at her reflection. She could see her name on the sign above, but she felt like she was watching someone else. I told her to step inside in imagination, to feel the counter under her hands, to hear the bell above the door, to smell the scent of fresh flowers she had placed there. The next time she imagined, she did so as the living owner, and within a year, the shop was hers. There is an invisible line between the state of wishing and the state of having. Wishing keeps the desire at a distance, as something hoped for in the future. Having brings it into the present as something enjoyed now. In imagination, you must cross that line and dwell entirely in the state of having. The mind does not resist what it accepts as present fact, and once accepted, it begins to project that fact into the world of the senses. It may help to remember that the inner world is timeless. The moment you create a scene and enter it fully, that moment exists in eternity. The outer world must move to align with it, but the inner event is already complete. This is why you need not concern yourself with how or when it will happen. Those belong to the outer sequence of events, which will arrange themselves without your supervision. Your only task is to sustain the reality within. Even if your present circumstances seem far removed from your desire, do not be discouraged. The very distance you perceive is an illusion, for in the inner world there is no gap between you and what you desire. If you can see it in imagination, you have touched it in the only realm where creation takes place. The outer form is merely the slow crystallization of what already exists in the unseen. When you practice this art, you will notice that the boundary between the imagined and the real begins to blur. You will find yourself remembering your inner experiences as though they had truly happened. This is the sign that your mind has accepted them as fact, and the world is now obliged to confirm them. A man told me that after weeks of imagining his reunion with a friend he had lost touch with, he awoke one morning uncertain whether the meeting had taken place in reality or only in his nightly visions. That very afternoon, he received a letter from that friend, leading to the reunion he had so often pictured. This blending of memory and imagination is the natural result of sustained inner vision. So, when you enter your scene tonight, do not treat it as a faint, far-off possibility. Step into it as you would step into a warm, well-lit room from the cold outside. Close the door on the outer world and let the reality of the inner one surround you. See it, hear it, touch it, until it is more solid to you than the pillow beneath your head. If it is the winning of a prize, hear the announcement, feel the weight of the check, count the bills, hear the laughter of celebration. Let the scene end naturally in the joy of fulfillment and drift into sleep with that joy still pulsing in your being. What you do in those last moments before sleep is of the greatest importance, for in sleep, the conscious mind rests, and the subconscious moves to bring forth the impressions it has received. If you fall asleep in the state of having, the subconscious will accept that state as reality and begin to mold the world to fit it. Night after night, return to your scene until it takes on the solidity of memory, and know that in the silence of the unseen, the work is already done. If you truly listen, you will hear me say over and over that the outer world is but the shadow of the inner state. It is not the cause. It is not the power. It is the echo, and the echo cannot precede the voice that makes it. If you would change the echo, you must change the voice. If you would change the effect, you must alter the cause. The cause is invisible, immaterial, intangible. And yet it is the only thing that shapes what you call your reality. That cause is the state in which you live inwardly, the atmosphere of your own consciousness, the tone of your inner conversations, the nature of the pictures you habitually behold in imagination. You walk daily among facts, but these facts are already past events in spirit. The moment you see them, they are done. They are no more living causes, they are corpses, and you are the one who either mourns over them or gives them burial by refusing to call them back to life. Consider for a moment a farmer. He does not reap wheat in his field because he happened to pass by and desire it. He reaps wheat because long before the harvest he sowed wheat. He tended the ground, he guarded against pests, he watered, and he waited, knowing the seed would not betray him. He did not sow thistles and then pray for wheat. Yet how many in this world sow the thistle of poverty and imagination and then cry out to the heavens for the harvest of wealth? How many in relationships sow the seed of doubt, jealousy, and fear, yet expect to gather trust, love, and harmony? You cannot sow one thing inwardly and reap another outwardly. The law is sure every seed reproduces after its own kind. When I speak of a state, I speak of that abiding condition of feeling in which you dwell. You may say you desire love or abundance or victory, but if inwardly you live in the state of being unloved, of being in want, of being defeated, then you are sowing that seed, and it must, by the law of its own nature, bring forth after its kind. The facts you meet tomorrow will spring from the unseen seed you are planting now this very night. In the matter of sudden fortune, be it the lottery, an unexpected gift, or a windfall from unknown quarters, the ignorant will attribute it to chance. They will say, he was lucky, or it just happened. But no, it did not just happen. The outer event is always preceded by an inner assumption, though the one who experienced it may not have been aware of what he was doing inwardly. Perhaps he fell asleep many nights with a warm sense of freedom from all financial care. Perhaps he imagined himself telling a friend of some marvelous change in his affairs. He planted without knowing, but the seed was sown nonetheless, and at the appointed hour, the harvest came. You cannot cheat this law. You cannot stand in a cold, empty state inwardly and demand warmth and fullness outwardly. The shadow will follow the body wherever it goes, and the body is your inner consciousness. If the shadow displeases you, do not chase it with your hands. Change the way you stand to the light. Let me give you a small example. There was a woman who longed to be married, yet she carried about with her, in the deep recesses of her mind, the constant story that men cannot be trusted. Every conversation, every inward dialogue confirmed it. She saw in others' lives proof of it. She even found in her own past memories that gave weight to her belief. Yet she also prayed for a loving husband. The prayer was contradicted nightly by the assumption she held as truth. Only when she was willing to dwell in the state of being already securely loved, only when she abandoned the inner rehearsals of betrayal, did her world begin to rearrange itself. Within months, she met the man who matched her new inner climate, for she could only meet the reflection of her state. Do not suppose that this law works only in matters of love. In wealth, it is precisely the same. A man may say he wishes to win a great prize. He may even buy the ticket. But if he holds himself inwardly as one who is always just missing, always left out, always the one who almost wins, then his harvest will be the exact image of that state. And should he, by the force of a momentary contrary assumption, actually win, his world will soon drain him of that gain until he is once again in harmony with his abiding state. This is why it is not enough to desire an event. One must enter and dwell in the state from which that event naturally flows. You may recall the words, "As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he." The heart, in Scripture, is the subconscious, the deep feeling self. It is not the casual thought that shapes the world, but the thought fused with feeling, the thought believed, the thought accepted as true. If your heart believes in limitation, you will meet it everywhere. If your heart is anchored in the conviction that your life is already full, rich, and complete, the outer world must echo that truth. Think of the state as the mold and the outer fact as the casting. Once the mold is set, the casting must conform to it. You cannot pour molten gold into a mold for a coin and expect a goblet to emerge. If you wish a goblet, you must change the mold. This change of mold is the alteration of your inner state. And it is here that imagination is the great creative instrument, for it allows you to fashion within yourself the exact form you wish to see hardened into fact. I tell you, there is nothing in your outer life that was not first an unseen assumption, whether it be a small matter like the finding of a misplaced object, or a great one like the winning of a fortune. It begins as a seed you choose, knowingly or unknowingly, to plant in the garden of your own soul. The weeds are as certain to grow as the roses if you plant them. But you are free every moment to choose anew. Let no one persuade you that the outer state creates the inner. It is always the reverse. You do not feel secure because your world is abundant. Your world is abundant because you feel secure. You do not feel loved because others embrace you. Others embrace you because you first embraced yourself in consciousness. The state precedes the fact as the seed precedes the harvest. I have seen men and women transform their entire existence by a stubborn refusal to entertain any feeling inconsistent with their desired state. The world called them unrealistic, dreamers, even fools. Yet in the end, the so-called facts yielded and the dreamers were vindicated. For in truth, they were not denying facts, they were refusing to sow the seed that would perpetuate those facts. And so I say, examine yourself. Not the world, not your neighbor, not the figures in your bank book, or the conditions of your relationships. Examine the state in which you dwell inwardly. What is the atmosphere of your mind? What is the tone of your inner voice? Do you awake in the morning already anticipating lack? Or do you awaken with the quiet certainty that all you desire is flowing to you? These are not idle questions, they are the keys to your treasure house. For as you dwell inwardly, so shall you live outwardly. If you wish for the shadow to dance in joy, you must first let the soul sing. And if you wish for the harvest of plenty, you must live now in the season of sowing plenty. In imagination, in feeling, in the quiet, steady conviction that what you seek is already yours in the invisible, awaiting only the ripening of time to be seen in the visible. Faith is the unseen hand that moves the visible world, and it is not a fragile hope, nor a timid wish, nor a trembling request for mercy from some distant power. Faith is bold, unwavering, certain. It is the inner conviction that what you have assumed is already so, and because it is so in the depths of your being, it must in time appear before your eyes. Without this unwavering certainty, the seed of your desire lies dormant, for it is not enough to plant. It must be nurtured by the warmth of sustained belief. When I speak of the act of faith, I speak not of fleeting moments of inspiration followed by hours of doubt. I speak of a continuous state, an inner posture from which you refuse to descend, no matter how fiercely the winds of circumstance may blow. The outer world may shout that you are foolish, that you have misread the signs, that there is no way for what you imagine to be true. But you must know within yourself that the outer world is but a shadow, and shadows cannot dictate the form from which they spring. You may have seen a seedling push its way through the hardest soil, defying stones and dry earth, reaching for the light with quiet persistence. No man looking upon the barren ground could have guessed that a tender shoot was making its way upward. and yet, hidden from sight, life moved with certainty. So it is with the work of your faith. Beneath the visible facts, your unseen assumption presses forward, making its way into expression, unstoppable unless you uproot it with disbelief. I have known those who, at the first sign of delay, abandon their inner vision. They say to themselves, "It was not meant to be." But who told them that? Was it the voice of truth or the whisper of fear masquerading as reason? Remember this: what you dare to assume and hold as true in the silence of your mind is already yours, for all things exist now in the eternal present. Time is not your enemy. It is the gentle servant that arranges the events of your life to deliver into your hands what you have claimed in spirit. Imagine a man who dreams of winning a great prize. He does not merely think of it once and then return to the state of not having it. Night after night, he closes his eyes and feels the weight of the envelope in his hands. He hears the voice congratulating him, sees the faces smiling at his good fortune, feels the quickened beat of his own heart as the reality sinks in. He lives there, in that scene, so fully that it becomes more real to him than the room in which he lies. And when he wakes, he walks as one who has already received it. He does not look for signs with anxious eyes. He knows the sign is already within him. This is faith. It is not that you beg the world to change. You know the world must change because you have already changed within. Faith does not argue with appearances. If the bank account is empty, faith does not tremble. If the doctor speaks words of doubt, faith does not yield. If the loved one turns away, faith does not chase in desperation. Faith remains still, seeing the end as already accomplished, and lets the world rearrange itself accordingly. The outer facts are like the weather. They shift and change without warning. But the inner state is the climate, the constant, and from that climate the outer weather takes its cue. You cannot plant a tropical seed in the soil of a frozen land and expect it to bear fruit. In the same way, you cannot plant the seed of abundance while dwelling in the cold state of lack and expect a harvest. The act of faith is to remain in the warm, fertile soil of already having, regardless of what outer winter may come. Do you recall the words, "Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen"? Substance is not a shadow. It is the reality from which the shadow springs. Evidence is not a guess. It is proof. Faith is proof of the unseen. It is your inner evidence that what you desire is already a fact, though it has not yet cast its shadow into the realm of matter. When you have this inner proof, you will no longer seek outer confirmation, for the inner world will be enough to satisfy you until the outer world catches up. Consider the artist who begins with a blank canvas. To the onlooker, there is nothing yet to admire, but in the mind of the artist, the work is already complete. Each stroke is guided by the inner vision, not by the emptiness of the canvas. The act of faith in your own life is the same. You act, you think, you speak from the completed work within you, not from the unfinished picture the world may see. There is a great temptation to measure progress by the calendar, to say, "It has been 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years, and still nothing has changed." But tell me, does the seed in the ground know how many days have passed? Does it concern itself with the speed of its growth? No, it simply lives, drawing from the invisible forces around it, until the day comes when it breaks the surface. So must you live, drawing from the invisible force of your sustained assumption, until the day your desire breaks into sight. There are those who will test their faith like a man testing the wind, holding it for a moment, then letting it go if the breeze does not shift at once. Such faith is not faith at all, but curiosity. The act of faith is not a trial you make once to see if it works. It is a way of being. You do not drop your state when the outer world challenges it. You deepen it. You do not question your right to hold it. You affirm it more strongly. If you would truly live by faith, then you must train yourself to feel the reality of your desire in the quiet moments of the day. Do not let idle thought pull you back into the old state. When you walk, walk as one who has already arrived at the destination. When you speak, speak as one who has already received. When you think, think from the place of fulfillment, not about it. This is not imagination in the sense of mere fantasy. It is creative reality, and the outer world must yield to it. You may say, but what if I am surrounded by people who do not believe as I do? What if they speak constantly of lack, of failure, of impossibility? Then hold your faith in silence. The seed does not shout from the ground to prove its existence. It grows in stillness until its presence is undeniable. Do not cast your pearls before those who would trample them. Your faith is your own sacred possession. Guard it. In the act of faith, there is no striving, no frantic effort to make something happen. There is only the quiet knowing that it is already so. Striving comes from doubt, knowing comes from faith. If you find yourself straining to bring your desire about, stop and return to the inner place where it is already complete. Rest there. Live there. The outer will come of its own accord. I tell you, the act of faith is the most natural thing in the world, for you have done it many times without naming it. Think of a journey you planned, a ticket you purchased, a destination you chose. Before you left your home, you spoke of the journey as certain, though you had not yet set foot on the road. You packed your bag, you prepared your affairs, you told your friends. Why? Because the moment you bought the ticket, you assumed the trip was yours. That is faith in action. In the same way, when you assume the state of your desire, you have purchased the ticket in consciousness, and the journey to its outer realization has begun. Hold to this inner ticket. Let no delay, no detour, no passing storm convince you that your journey will not end as you have seen it. You will arrive not because of chance, but because you have already arrived in the only place that matters, in the depths of your own being. If you would truly prove the power that is within you, you must learn to close the door of your senses and walk into the invisible, carrying with you the conviction that what you desire is already yours. Faith is not an idle wish, nor a trembling hope. It is the deliberate assumption of the fulfilled desire, held with such constancy that no outer evidence can shake it from you. You are told, let not that man who wavers think he shall receive anything of the Lord, for a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. This is not a poetic reprimand, it is a mystical law. The moment you allow the outer world to dictate the measure of your faith, you have abandoned the creative cause and surrendered to the effect. To live by faith is to live from the unseen, and this unseen is not far away, nor hidden in some unreachable heaven. It is here, clothed in your own imaginal act. If you can dare to believe in the reality of what is not yet seen by the natural eye, then you have already entered into possession. For possession, in the world of spirit, is not measured by the hands, but by the consciousness that claims it. The man who knows himself to be wealthy is wealthy, though his purse be empty at this hour. The woman who knows herself to be loved is loved, though no voice has yet declared it. All things begin in the invisible before they appear in the visible, and the invisible is nothing more than your own state of awareness. But to sustain the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you must guard your mind as a watchman guards the gate of a city. For there will come moments, subtle and quiet, when doubt seeks to enter. You will hear the whisper of reason saying, "It has been too long. Perhaps it will not come. Perhaps you are deceiving yourself." And if you entertain that guest, it will sit at your table and grow strong in your house. In such moments you must turn inward with firmness, declaring within yourself, "It is done. I have it now. I am what I have assumed myself to be." Do not seek signs to reassure you, for signs follow, they do not precede. The seed does not first sprout in the earth because you have seen the stalk appears because the seed has already germinated in the darkness. Consider the farmer. He does not run each morning to the field to see if the harvest has come. He knows the laws of the soil, and having planted, he rests in confidence. If you will live in such confidence, refusing to dig up your seed of assumption with anxious thought, you will see your harvest in its perfect season. There is a strange delight in this quiet certainty, a peace that comes when you have settled the matter in your own soul and no longer argue with appearances. The world may still show you the opposite, but you have left that world behind the moment you entered into your desired state. I recall a friend who desired to leave a position in which she felt unappreciated and confined. She had no visible prospect of change. No one had promised her an opportunity, and yet she resolved within herself to accept a new state. Each night, she imagined the voice of a new employer congratulating her, and she felt the satisfaction of beginning fresh in a place where her abilities were recognized. Days passed, then weeks, with nothing in the outer to suggest that her desire was possible. Yet she continued, refusing to let the old state of limitation back into her consciousness. One morning, without any seeking on her part, she received an unexpected call offering her exactly the position she had imagined. It had been moving toward her all the while, though invisible, and only her steadfast inner vision allowed it to reach her without being turned aside by doubt. To act in faith is not to force conditions by outer effort, it is to persist inwardly in the knowing that the invisible is more real than the visible. Faith does not strain, it rests. You cannot hold an imaginal scene with tension in your mind, for such tension only betrays the fact that you do not yet believe it is done. True faith releases the burden of how and when, and allows the creative power to work unhindered. This is why it is said, "According to your faith be it unto you." Not according to your labor, nor your worry, but according to your unwavering inner acceptance of the end as already accomplished. In relationships, this law operates with the same certainty. If you would be loved, then enter into the state of being loved now. Feel yourself cherished, valued, sought after, and that invisible atmosphere will clothe you, attracting to you all that corresponds with it. If you would reconcile with one from whom you have been estranged, do not dwell on the quarrel, the distance, or the pain. Such dwelling is faith in separation. Instead, in the secrecy of your mind, hear their voice speaking words of affection, see the light in their eyes, and let the warmth of that union fill you until you cannot feel otherwise. To the outer world, nothing may seem to change at first, but inwardly you have already altered the cause, and the effect must follow. There will be times when the outer facts shout their denial at you. You may receive letters, hear reports, or see actions that seem to contradict your inner assumption. This is the very hour when your faith must shine brightest. For what you are seeing is nothing more than the residue of your old state, like the lingering echo of a song that has ended. It has no creative power unless you reawaken it by accepting it as true again. Ignore it and persist in the truth you have claimed. Faith is tested not when everything aligns, but when everything seems opposed. The one who can stand unmoved in that moment has already mastered the secret of creation. There is a passage that says, "Hold fast the confession of your hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful." The he here is not another, but your own I am, the eternal being within you that spoke the desire into your heart. The moment you felt the longing, it was already given, for desire is nothing else than the awareness of what already exists in the unseen. To doubt its fulfillment is to doubt your own being. But to stand firm in its reality, regardless of appearances, is to align yourself with the immutable law that all things seen are made from things unseen. I tell you, nothing is impossible to the one who refuses to look away from the end. If you can dwell in the joy, the relief, the gratitude of already having received, you will find that the outer world reshapes itself in ways you could not have devised. This is the act of faith, not an occasional effort, but a continual dwelling in the unseen reality until it becomes the only reality to you. And when it does, the outer must yield, for it has no choice but to mirror the inner cause. So in the end, the state you choose to occupy becomes the foundation of every connection you experience. When you persist in the inner vision of harmony, devotion, and mutual understanding, the outer world cannot help but take the shape of that vision. Love does not arrive by chance or through the passing of time. It blossoms from the certainty within you that it already exists. Hold fast to that certainty, let every thought and feeling be colored by it, and you will find that what once seemed distant or difficult becomes natural, effortless, and deeply real.